Thomas Whitmore died on a Tuesday morning in May. Heart attack, sudden, unexpected. He was 68 years old. His wife, Isabella, found him in their bedroom, called 911, rode with him in the ambulance. She held his hand as he took his last breath, and according to everyone at the funeral 3 days later, she was devastated, inconsolable, the grieving widow. But Thomas's daughter from his first marriage, Claire, stood at the back of that funeral and watched Isabella cry. And something felt wrong. The tears looked real, the grief looked real, but Claire had seen her stepmother's phone 2 weeks before her father died. She'd seen the text messages to someone named Julian, messages that said things like, "Just a little longer, then we'll have everything." Claire watched Isabella sob into her handkerchief at the funeral, and she knew. Her father hadn't died of a heart attack. He'd been murdered.
The funeral was ending. The casket was being lowered, and Claire was the only one who knew the truth. Before we go deeper into this, take a breath with me and tell me, where are you watching from tonight? City and country? I'd like to know how far this story travels. Kindly subscribe to help our channel grow and so you don't miss stories like this. Because what you're about to hear, it's darker than you think. Now, let's go back to where it all began.
Thomas Whitmore was a good man. Not perfect, not a saint, but good. He'd built his life from nothing, started as a factory worker in Detroit in the 1970s, worked his way up, eventually started his own manufacturing company. By the time he was 50, he was wealthy. Not billionaire wealthy, but comfortable. 2 homes, investments, a retirement fund that would last him the rest of his life. He'd been married once before, to Claire's mother, Margaret. They'd been high school sweethearts, married young, had Claire when they were barely 25. The marriage was solid for 30 years. But Margaret got sick, breast cancer. Thought for 3 years. She died when Claire was 28. Thomas was devastated, completely lost. He'd been with Margaret since he was 17 years old. She was the only woman he had ever loved. For 2 years after she died, Thomas barely left the house. Claire would visit, bring groceries, try to get him to eat. "Dad, you have to keep living," she'd tell him. "I don't know how to live without her," he'd say. It broke Claire's heart. She wanted her father to be happy again, to find some kind of peace. But she never expected what happened next. Thomas met Isabella at a grief support group. It was Claire's idea, actually. "Dad, you need to talk to people who understand what you're going through," she'd said. So Thomas went, reluctantly. And that's where he met her. Isabella Romano, 42 years old, beautiful, elegant, sophisticated. She'd lost her husband 2 years earlier, car accident, no children. She and Thomas started talking after the meetings, then coffee, then dinner. Within 6 months, they were dating. Claire was conflicted. On one hand, she was relieved. Her father was smiling again, laughing, living. But on the other hand, something about Isabella felt off. She was too perfect, too polished, too interested in the details of Thomas's finances. "How's your father's business doing?" Isabella would ask Claire. "Does he have a good retirement plan? Has he thought about estate planning?" Questions that felt intrusive. But when Claire mentioned it to her father, he'd laugh. "She's just being practical, sweetheart. She's been through loss. She knows how important it is to be prepared." Claire wanted to believe that, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Isabella was calculating something. 2 years after they started dating, Thomas proposed. Claire found out when he called her excited like a teenager. "Claire Bear, I have news. I asked Isabella to marry me. She said yes." Claire forced herself to sound happy. "That's wonderful, Dad. I'm so happy for you. I know it's fast, but life is short. I lost your mother. I don't want to waste time. I understand. I want you to be part of the wedding. You're my daughter, the most important person in my life." Claire felt tears sting her eyes. "Of course, Dad, whatever you need." But after she hung up, she sat in her car and cried because she had a terrible feeling. A feeling that Isabella Romano was not who she claimed to be. The wedding was small, intimate. Thomas in a gray suit, Isabella in an elegant cream dress. Claire stood beside her father as his best woman. Isabella's side of the aisle was sparse. A few friends, no family. "Where are your relatives?" Thomas had asked her once. "I don't have any," Isabella said sadly. "I'm an only child. My parents passed away years ago. My husband was my family. And now I have you." It made Thomas love her even more. He saw her as this tragic, beautiful figure who'd lost everything, and he wanted to give her everything. But during the reception, Claire overheard a conversation. Isabella on the phone in the hallway, voice low. "Yes, it's done. We're married. I know. I'll call you later." Claire's heart stopped. She peeked around the corner, saw Isabella quickly hang up, compose herself, put on a smile, then walk back into the reception like nothing had happened. Claire wanted to say something, wanted to ask who Isabella had been talking to. But it was her father's wedding day. She couldn't ruin it based on a feeling. So she smiled, hugged her father, congratulated Isabella, and swallowed her suspicions. But over the next year, those suspicions grew. Thomas and Isabella moved into a new house together. Bigger, more expensive. "Isabella thought we should upgrade," Thomas explained. "She's right. We deserve something nice." Thomas started changing his will, his estate planning. "I want to make sure Isabella's taken care of if something happens to me." "Thomas, you're 67. You're healthy. Nothing's going to happen to you." "You never know, sweetheart. I want to be prepared." Claire noticed other changes too. Her father started taking new medications, supplements, Isabella called them, for his heart, Isabella would say. The doctor recommended them. But when Claire asked which doctor, Isabella would wave it off. Some specialist, I can't remember the name. Thomas started losing weight, looking tired, moving slower. "Are you okay, Dad?" Claire would ask. "Just getting old," he'd laugh. But the laugh didn't reach his eyes. And then there were the arguments. Claire would visit and hear raised voices, doors slamming. Once, she walked in on Isabella yelling at Thomas about money. "You promised me we'd renovate the kitchen. You said we'd take that trip to Europe." Thomas looked exhausted. "I know, we will. I just need to be smart about spending." "Smart? You have plenty of money, Thomas. Stop being cheap." Claire cleared her throat. Both of them turned. Isabella's face transformed instantly into a smile. "Claire, hi. We were just discussing plans." But Claire had seen the real Isabella, just for a second. Cold, calculating, cruel.
2 weeks before Thomas died, Claire went to visit him. Isabella was out. "Shopping," Thomas said. Father and daughter sat on the porch, drinking iced tea, talking. Thomas looked frail, weak. "Dad, I'm worried about you." "I'm fine, Claire Bear." "You're not. You've lost so much weight. You look exhausted all the time." Thomas sighed. "I've been having some heart issues. Nothing serious. Doctor's adjusting my medication." "Which doctor?" "Dr. Patterson. He's new. Isabella found him." Claire's stomach tightened. "Can I come to your next appointment? I'd like to hear what he says." Thomas hesitated. "I don't think that's necessary." "Dad, please, I'm your daughter. I want to be involved." He nodded slowly. "Okay, next week. I'll let you know when." But there never was a next week, because 2 days later, Claire got a call that would change everything. It was a Saturday afternoon. Claire was at home when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Is this Claire Whitmore?" "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Julian Reeves. I need to talk to you about your father." Claire's blood gone cold. "What about my father?" "I can't do this over the phone. Can we meet?" "Who are you?" "I'm someone who knows your stepmother, and I think your father is in danger." They met at a coffee shop the next day. Julian Reeves was in his 30s, handsome, nervous. He sat across from Claire, hands shaking. "Thank you for meeting me. You said my father's in danger? Explain." Julian took a deep breath. "I've been seeing Isabella for 8 months." Claire's world tilted. "What? Seeing her? Dating her? I didn't know she was married at first. She told me she was single, widowed. Oh my God." And when I found out she was married, I confronted her. She said it was complicated, that the marriage was just for security, that she'd leave him soon. Claire felt sick. "And you believed her?" Julian looked ashamed. "I was stupid. I was in love. But then I started noticing things." "What things?" "She was always talking about his money, his investments, his will. She'd ask me questions about poisons, about making things look like natural causes." Claire's hands numbed. "What did you say?" "At first I thought she was joking, but then she showed me documents, life insurance policies, with her as the sole beneficiary." "How much?" $2 million. The coffee shop spun around Claire. "She's going to kill him," Claire whispered. Julian nodded, tears in his eyes. "I think she might already be doing it, slowly." Claire called her father immediately after leaving the coffee shop. "Dad, I need to see you, right now." "Claire, I'm not feeling well. Can it wait?" "No, it can't wait. I'm coming." "Isabella's home?" "I don't care." She drove to her father's house, knocked on the door. Isabella answered, perfect smile. "Claire, what a surprise!" "I need to talk to my father, alone. He's resting, now." Something flickered in Isabella's eyes, but she stepped aside. Thomas was in the living room, on the couch, looking terrible. "Dad, we need to talk." Isabella stood in the doorway. "I'll give you privacy." "No," Claire said. "Actually, I want you to hear this too." Isabella's smile tightened. "Hear what?" Claire turned to her father. "Dad, have you been feeling worse since you started taking those new medications?" Yes, but the doctor said that's normal." "What doctor?" "I called Dr. Patterson's office. They've never heard of you." Thomas blinked. "What?" Claire turned to Isabella. "Who's been giving him those pills?" Isabella's face remained calm. "I don't know what you're implying, but—" "I met Julian," Claire said. The room went silent. Isabella's face went white. "Who?" she said, but her voice had changed. "Julian Reeves, your boyfriend, the one you've been seeing behind my father's back while you slowly poison him for his money." Thomas stared at Isabella. "What is she talking about?" Isabella's composure cracked. "She's lying. She's jealous. She's always been jealous." "I have proof," Claire said. "Julian kept copies of the texts, the insurance documents, everything." Isabella's eyes went hard, cold. "You have no idea what you've done." "I've saved my father's life." "From what? From being lonely? From being miserable? I made him happy. I gave him a reason to live." "You poisoned him." "I gave him love. Something you never could." Thomas stood, shaking. "Get out!" "Thomas? Get out of my house, now."
Isabella didn't leave quietly. She called a lawyer, claimed Thomas was being manipulated by his daughter, claimed she was the victim. But Claire had Julian, had the evidence, had the pills analyzed. They contained arsenic, small doses, enough to cause gradual organ failure that would look like natural causes. The police arrested Isabella 3 days later. She was charged with attempted murder, insurance fraud, elder abuse. Thomas was hospitalized, treated for arsenic poisoning. He survived, but barely. While Thomas recovered in the hospital, the full truth came out. Isabella Romano wasn't even her real name. Her real name was Lisa Morgan. She'd done this before. Twice. 2 previous husbands, both elderly, both wealthy, both dead under suspicious circumstances. But she'd never been caught, never been investigated. She'd moved to a new city each time, changed her name, found a new target. Thomas was supposed to be number 3. The police found journals in her apartment, detailed plans. Target: Thomas Whitmore, age 66, net worth approximately $4 million. Recently widowed, vulnerable, ideal. Phase 1: establish relationship, gain trust. Phase 2: marriage, access to finances. Phase 3: eliminate, make it look natural. Reading those journals, Claire felt cold all over. Her father hadn't been a person to Isabella. He'd been a mark, a job, nothing more. But the story didn't end there. Because while Claire was going through Isabella's belongings with the police, she found something else. A letter, hidden in a locked box, addressed to Isabella. From someone named Catherine. Claire opened it, and what she read changed everything she thought she knew. Lisa, I'm writing this because I need you to understand, before you go through with your plan, before you hurt someone else. I know what happened to you. I know why you're doing this. But it won't heal you. It won't bring him back. Please, stop before it's too late. Mom. Claire stared at the letter. Mom? Isabella had told Thomas she had no family, that her parents were dead. But here was a letter from her mother. Recent. Within the last year. Claire found more. Letters spanning decades, some pleading, some angry, some heartbroken, all of them trying to reach a daughter who wouldn't listen. And underneath the letters, Claire found photos of a young girl, maybe 8 years old, with a man, smiling, happy. On the back of one photo, handwriting. Lisa and her father, Robert, last good day, 1987. And then another photo, years later, a funeral. Robert's funeral, Lisa, age 12, 1991. Claire sat on the floor surrounded by these pieces of a story she didn't understand. And she realized Isabella wasn't just a monster. She was someone who'd been broken and had spent the rest of her life trying to make someone pay.
Claire hired a private investigator to find Catherine Morgan. It took 2 weeks, but they found her, living in a small town in Oregon, alone. Claire drove there, knocked on her door. An older woman answered, late 60s, tired eyes. "Can I help you?" "My name is Claire Whitmore. My father was married to your daughter." Catherine's face crumpled. "Oh God, is Thomas? He's alive." She didn't succeed. Catherine closed her eyes. "Thank God. Can we talk? I need to understand." Catherine opened the door wider. They sat in Catherine's small living room. Photos of Isabella, Lisa, everywhere. School photos, birthday photos, family photos. "She was my baby," Catherine said quietly. "My only child." "What happened to her?" Catherine took a shaky breath. Her husband, Robert, he was wonderful, kind, funny. Lisa adored him. "What happened?" "He died. Heart attack. Sudden." Lisa was 12. Catherine's voice broke. She was devastated. We both were. But Lisa, she couldn't accept it, couldn't process it. How did she cope? She didn't. She started saying it was someone's fault, that someone had killed him. She'd come up with these theories about doctors, about insurance companies, about people wanting our money. Was any of it true? No. Robert died of a genetic heart condition. It was tragic, but natural. But Lisa couldn't accept that, because accepting it meant that the world was random, that bad things just happen. Catherine wiped her eyes. So she created a narrative where someone was responsible, someone she could blame, someone she could punish. And she never let it go? No. It got worse as she got older. She'd seek out older men, men who reminded her of her father, wealthy men, men with health issues. And she'd marry them. Catherine nodded. She convinced herself she was avenging her father, taking from the people who'd taken from her. But her father wasn't taken. He just died. I know. I tried to tell her for years, but she wouldn't listen.
She cut me off when she was 18. I've been trying to reach her ever since. Catherine pulled out more letters, dozens of them, all returned, unopened. I failed her, Catherine whispered. I couldn't save her from herself. Claire sat with this for a long time. She thought about her own loss, her own mother, the grief that had nearly consumed her father, but her father had found a way through it, with help, with time. Isabella never had. She turned her grief into rage, her loss into violence, and now she destroyed her own life trying to destroy others. What will happen to her? Catherine asked. She's going to prison for a long time. Catherine nodded, tears streaming down her face. I hope... She started, then stopped. What? I hope someday she can grieve properly. That's all I've ever wanted for her, to let herself be sad instead of angry. Claire visited Thomas in the hospital every day while he recovered. He was getting stronger, color returning to his face. But he was different, quieter, haunted. I loved her, he told Claire one afternoon. I know, Dad. I actually loved her, and the whole time she was planning to kill me. I'm so sorry. Thomas stared out the window. Your mother was real, Margaret. She was real. And I wasted these last years on someone who saw me as nothing more than a paycheck. Dad, I'm angry. At her, at myself, at the universe. I'm so angry. Claire took his hand. That's okay. You're allowed to be angry. But I also feel sorry for her. Claire looked up, surprised. Why? Because I lost Margaret, and it nearly killed me. But I had you. I had support. I had help. He turned to Claire. Isabella lost her father, and she had no one. Or she pushed everyone away, and that loss ate her alive. Tears rolled down his cheeks. I don't forgive her, but I understand her.
Isabella's trial was scheduled for 6 months later. Thomas testified. So did Claire. So did Julian. The evidence was overwhelming. But during the trial, something unexpected happened. Isabella's lawyer called Catherine to the stand. Catherine had traveled from Oregon. She sat in the witness box, hands shaking. The lawyer asked her questions about Isabella's childhood, about Robert's death, about Lisa's spiral. And Catherine answered honestly, tearfully. She didn't excuse her daughter's actions, but she explained them. When the prosecutor cross-examined Catherine, he was harsh. Your daughter is a murderer. She's a sick woman. She chose this path. Catherine shook her head. She was a child when she lost her father, a child who needed help, and I failed to get her that help. Catherine looked directly at Isabella for the first time. Isabella had been stone-faced the entire trial, cold, emotionless. But looking at her mother, something cracked. I didn't fail you because I didn't love you, Catherine said, her voice breaking. I failed you because I didn't know how to reach you. I didn't know how to show you that your pain was valid without your rage being valid too. Isabella's face crumpled, and for the first time since her arrest, she cried. Real tears, not manipulative, not performed, just grief. The grief of a 12-year-old girl who'd lost her father and never learned how to let him go. The jury found Isabella guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 35 years in prison. But after the sentencing, before she was taken away, Isabella asked to speak to Thomas. The guards allowed it, supervised. Thomas agreed. They sat across from each other in a small room, a table between them. Isabella looked at him, really looked at him. I'm sorry, she said. Thomas said nothing. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know sorry doesn't fix what I did, but I need to say it anyway. Why? Thomas asked quietly. Why me? Because you reminded me of him, my father. You were kind, gentle. You loved me in a way that felt real, and I hated you for it.
Why? Because I'd convinced myself that men like you, men like my father, didn't exist anymore, that they'd all been taken, that the world didn't deserve them. She wiped her eyes. But you were real, and that terrified me, because it meant my father's death really was just random, meaningless, and I'd wasted 26 years of my life trying to make it mean something. Thomas stared at her. I hope you find peace, he said finally. Real peace. Not vengeance, not anger. Peace. Isabella nodded. I hope you do too.
A year after the trial, Catherine reached out to Claire. They'd stayed in touch, exchanged emails, phone calls. Catherine asked if she and Thomas would be willing to visit Isabella in prison. Thomas hesitated. Why? He asked. Because she's asked for us, Catherine said. She's been in therapy, real therapy, and she wants to apologize, properly. Thomas looked at Claire. What do you think? I think closure might be good for all of us. So they went. The three of them sat across from Isabella in the prison visiting room. Isabella looked different, thinner, older, but also softer, less like a predator, more like a person. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. Your mother said you wanted to talk, Thomas said. Isabella nodded. I've been working with a therapist here, trying to understand why I did what I did, and I wanted to tell you what I've learned. She took a deep breath. I spent my whole life trying to kill my father. The room went silent. Not literally, but symbolically. Every man I targeted, every plan I made, I was trying to reenact his death, but with me in control this time. She looked at Thomas. With you, it was different, because you actually cared about me, and that made me hate you more, because you were showing me what I'd lost, what I'd never get back. Tears streamed down her face. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that the woman you fell in love with, she was real, or part of her was, the part of me that was still 12 years old, still looking for her father. Thomas's own eyes filled with tears. I wish I could have helped you. She said, you tried. I just wasn't ready to be helped. Catherine reached across the table, put her hand over Isabella's. I'm proud of you, she said, for doing this work, for facing the truth. Isabella squeezed her mother's hand. I'm sorry, Mom, for pushing you away, for wasting so many years. You're my daughter. I never stopped loving you. I never will. And they sat there, the four of them, unlikely and broken, but somehow finding a way toward healing.
Thomas returned to his normal life slowly. He sold the house he'd shared with Isabella. Too many memories. Moved into a smaller place, simpler. He started going back to his grief support group, the one where he'd first met Isabella. But this time, he went to heal, not to escape. He talked about Margaret, about his love for her, about his mistakes with Isabella. And he forgave himself, not for being fooled, but for being human. Claire started volunteering with an organization that helped families dealing with unresolved grief. She'd learned something from this whole experience, that grief, when left unprocessed, could become poison, that loss, when turned inward, could destroy you, that healing was hard, but necessary. She told Thomas's story, Isabella's story, her own story, and helped others see that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was survival. Catherine continued to visit Isabella every month. They talked for hours about everything, about Robert, about the past, about missed opportunities, about forgiveness. Slowly, over years, Isabella began to change, not into someone else, but into someone who could live with who she'd been. She enrolled in education programs in prison, got her degree, started mentoring younger inmates. She'd never get out. She knew that. 35 years meant she'd die in prison. But she could still do something good with the time she had left. She could be the person her father would have been proud of. 5 years after the trial, Thomas stood in front of a small classroom, a grief support group he was facilitating now. 15 people sat in a circle, all of them dealing with loss. "My name is Thomas," he said. "And 5 years ago, I almost died because I didn't know how to grieve properly." He told them his story, all of it, about Margaret, about Isabella, about how close he'd come to losing everything. "Grief is dangerous," he said, "not because it hurts, but because when we don't face it, when we don't feel it, it finds other ways out. Sometimes it becomes depression, sometimes addiction, sometimes anger." He paused. "And sometimes, like in Isabella's case, it becomes something worse. But grief itself, grief is just love with nowhere to go. And if we can learn to redirect it, to honor our losses while still living our lives, grief can be a gift." The group listened, some crying, some nodding. And Thomas felt for the first time in years like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Claire visited her father after the meeting. They had dinner, talked, laughed. "I'm proud of you, Dad," she said. "For what?" "For turning something terrible into something meaningful." Thomas smiled. "Your mother would have liked that." She would have. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "Do you think Isabella will ever really heal?" Claire asked. "I don't know," Thomas said honestly. "But I think she's trying, and that's more than she was doing before. Do you forgive her?" Thomas thought about that. "I'm working on it. Some days are easier than others, but I'm trying to remember that she was a victim too, of her own pain, of her own inability to let go. That doesn't excuse what she did. No, but it helps me understand it. And understanding feels like a step toward forgiveness. He married her for love. She married him for his funeral. But somewhere in between, something unexpected happened. They both had to face the truth. Thomas had to face that not everyone who says they love you actually does. And Isabella had to face that no amount of vengeance would bring her father back. The story could have ended in death, in bitterness, in hatred. But instead, it ended in something harder. Understanding. Not forgiveness, not exactly. But an understanding that hurt people. And that healing is the only way to break the cycle. If you've ever lost someone you love, if you've ever felt that grief might destroy you, if you've ever wondered if you'll survive the pain, this story is for you. Because grief is real and hard and sometimes unbearable. But it's also proof that you loved. And love, even when it ends, is never wasted. Thomas is 73 now, still leading grief groups, still healing. Isabella is 48, still in prison, still working on herself. Catherine is 72, still visiting her daughter, still believing in redemption. And Claire? Claire is helping others navigate loss because she learned something her stepmother never did. That sometimes the best way to honor the dead is to keep living, fully, honestly, without revenge, just living.